Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
So looking at decisions that are both very personal and decisions that are more, broad-based, I tried to connect it to people's lives, because everybody has hard choices they have to make, becoming a mother, right? Getting married, staying married, getting a job, keeping a job. I mean, there's a lot of hard choices that every one of us go through. And then nations have to make hard choices and how they make them and what their values are.
Yeah, providing security, closing down embassies, hard choices. Whether or not to push the reset button and whether or not to declare Boko Haram a terrorist organization. These are tough choices. Joining us now, ladies and gentlemen, Rich Lowry, the editor-in-chief of the National Review, of course, the author of Lincoln Unbound. Hello, sir.
Hey, Steve. How's it going?
Good. Always good to talk to you. All right, you wrote a great piece, of course, at National Review Online about Karl Rove, and you said that Karl Rove is right, and that may not be shocking for folks who don't know that much, or just saying, well, National Review, conservative, Rich Lowry, but there were several, people on the conservative side who took Rove initially to task, which surprised me. But I agree with you. He's right.
Yeah, well, I think you got to disaggregate a couple things here, because Rove, in the original Page 6 report, it said that he had said that Hillary was brain damaged.
Which he says he did not say, yeah.
Yeah, he denies saying that, and that would be an outrageous and stupid thing to say. And the report also quoted him as saying that she'd been in the hospital 30 days, which he says if he said that, he misspoke. What he meant to say is what he said subsequently, that this entire episode lasted 30 days. So if you kind of cut through all that stuff and get to the essentials of his point, what he's saying is that her health is going to be a big element in her decision. And that's not really earth-shattering news. And most Democrats privately will tell you that you'll have to account in detail for this episode she went through, where she had a virus, was dehydrated, falls, gets a concussion, then they find this blood clot in her skull. So that's obviously true too. And if she doesn't account for all that, the mainstream media and the New York Times will actually probably be on her to do all that. And then finally, her age will be an issue. Any candidate that's upper 60s, 70s, it's always been an issue. It was an issue for McCain, for Bob Dole, for Ronald Reagan. Doesn't mean that she can't deal with all this stuff, but it is going to be an issue.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I'm glad you bring it up. Was it Muskie who had to withdraw because he had depression or had taken antidepressants? I seem to recall way back when, or at least came under scrutiny. But more recently, of course, and ironically enough, and this is what makes it more relevant, how Bill Clinton ran his campaign against Bob Dole, as you alluded to, Dole, calling him old and out of touch and worn out. And I mean, if that's good for Clinton, the Clinton machine to dish out, then they certainly have to be able to take it.
Yeah, well, the age issue is so upfront with Bob Dole that Time magazine actually had a cover. Is Bob Dole too old to be president? The New York Times ran a big news analysis on whether it was ageism, what the Clinton campaign was doing against Bob Dole. And it wasn't, explicitly saying, oh, gosh, Bob Dole is too old. What they did was say the Clinton campaign, his ideas are old, his rhetoric's worn out. So all of it was in the framework of Bob Dole being too old and having ideas anchored in the past. And I think it's going to be a natural for Republicans, especially if they have a presidential candidate from this new generation of national figures, they're going to do that sort of thing against Hillary as well. And so to guard against it, she's going to have a real future-oriented campaign. But it's going to be tough, because she's really going to be running for Barack Obama's third term. And I have a hard time seeing people being eager for a continuation of the status quo.
Right. No, she's going to have to distance herself from him on so many things. She's going to have to explain herself on her time as Secretary of State and all the disasters. Absolutely. But I want to go back to your point. I am just worried that even if this was a 55-year-old woman, healthy, the Republican candidate, whoever it is going to be gun shy. The way they were trained to be gun shy about going after Barack Obama on anything because you called a racist. Now, are we to realistically expect that the same Republican Party who tiptoes around everything because they're scared to death of the media is actually going to bring up Hillary's age or bring up Hillary's health? And because if you say anything about Hillary, if you put the accent on the wrong L in Hillary, you know you're an anti-woman.
Yeah, well, what we've learned over the last 8 years is supposedly this is as racist a country as has ever been, because every criticism of Barack Obama is called racist, and now this will become the most sexist country there's ever been during this interlude when Hillary runs, or to continue if she is actually elected, where every criticism will be the pushback from the left will be it's ageist or it's sexist.
Right.
And look, I do think these things have to be dealt with delicately. Certainly, whoever the candidate is shouldn't be out there talking about Hillary's health every day. Far from it. But again, these are questions that are going to need to be answered. And usually, the press is pretty good on pressing for health records to be completely open.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and let's hope that that standard does indeed continue. Let me ask you, Rich, about the president yesterday. Of course, too late in my view, and too little in my view. Way too late and too little. And in fact, if you go back to what the reports are now telling us, the president, his staff, his transition team knew back in 2008 and we had the head of Social Security under George W. Bush who said, yes, under Bush, there were big problems with the Veterans Administration. So he would not have been surprised that this was told to Obama's team in 2008 during transition. And now, he comes out and he's, oh, but it's outrageous. I just found out about this on CNN and I'm madder than hell. I mean, how for every scandal that happens, this is his MO.
Yeah, it's as if he's floating above his own government and really has nothing to do with it, and is constantly surprised when anything goes wrong and hears about it, on CNN or reads about it in the newspaper. But you're absolutely right. I mean, this is something that Barack Obama himself was talking about prior to being elected president about the outrageous wait times. And he was briefed on it in the transition, and there have been numerous GAO reports going back to at least to 2000 that these wait times are a problem and that the VA is being dishonest in how they account for them. I will say, Steve, I think the defenders of the president in this whole episode, they do have one good point, and you alluded to this as well, which is that the VA always had problems. It's had problems going back decades. And to me, that is even a more damning point, because why has it been so plagued with problems? Because it's the worst bureaucracy in the government. It's and it's the ideal model for the left of healthcare.
Well,
you have private insurance companies, you have no private doctors, money for the most part isn't changing hands. It's just the government and you, the patient. And the problem is that doesn't create enough leverage for the patient, so the government, the bureaucracy, protects its own interests.
Absolutely.
And that's what the essence of the scandal is about.
Absolutely. We had Larry Kudlow on earlier, and he said this is not a management problem, this is not a money problem, this is a socialized medicine problem, and this is where we're going to be down the road with Obamacare.
Correct. Now, Obamacare itself is not this, but as Obamacare kind of has stumbled out of the gate, you'll see liberals, and we've already seen a little of this, saying, well, we need to go to the next step, and we need to go to a version of single payer. And what the VA shows is that there's a cost to free health care. It's just hidden. And the cost comes in the rationing and in the delays in getting to care. So there's just no reason we have to do that. And the VA should be radically reformed, and it's in no way a model for the rest of the country. What we need is more consumer power and more competition rather than less, which is what the VA has.
Yeah, and there's a story out today, Weekly Standard, talking about that the director of the Phoenix VA last month got an $8,500 bonus. I mean, this is, and then they rescinded it, but still, it just shows that there is no accountability.
Yeah, well, and just yesterday, the House passed with 390 votes, a big bipartisan vote, an accountability bill that would give the secretary
the right to fire people.
Right.
How could he not have that right to fire people now?
Exactly. To make it much easier to fire people, and you're seeing resistance among some Democrats and resistance from the association that represents these senior managers saying, no, we can't have this. This is unraveling civil service the way it's supposed to work, and we just can't do it. So I think it's going to put Democrats in a really tight spot and Harry Reid in a real tight spot, because the Democrats are constantly saying, oh, we don't have enough bipartisanship in Washington. Here's a bipartisan bill that just landed in his chamber. And the question for him is, he going to take it up or not?
Yeah, well, of course, it depends what the puppet master, tells him to do. He does whatever Barack Obama tells him to do, in my view.
Well, I think there are two plays for the Democrats here. One, they'll dredge up the worst possible scandals they can find during the Bush administration and say, oh, everyone did it. And two, they'll offer some massive emergency supplemental spending bill and argue that that's going to cure the problem. And if Republicans balk, say Republicans don't really want to fix it.
Yeah. Why do I have a terrible feeling in the pit of my stomach, Rich, that you're exactly right. Listen, always great to talk to you, my friend. Thanks you very much.
Take care now.
Rich Lowry, ladies and gentlemen, National Review, the editor-in-chief of National Review. Check it out and check out his piece on what we just talked about with Karl Rove being right at nationalreview.com. All right, folks, we're coming back. Much, much more ahead on the Steve Malzberg Show.